you're in to talk about what goes wrong with Agile and how to fix it. If you're looking for something else, you're in the wrong room. So today I'm going to talk a lot about what goes wrong with a good Agile team. So there's a lot of, everyone's doing Agile, you've probably been somewhere that doesn't do it right. I'm actually at somewhere really good, and we still have problems. So that's what this talk is mostly about, not the boring Agile problems like, we just say we're Agile, and we have 30-person stand-ups. It's much more of like, we have great people, and we still have problems. So these are problems we're going to talk about and how we actually got to them. So we're going to talk a little bit about me, what I do, kind of Agile dysfunction, and then the meat of the presentation is going to be the problems and the fixes, and then kind of how you can use these to improve your team. And hopefully I won't be too preachy about it. So before we dive in, just a little about who I am. My name is Matt Swigo. I'll give call me Swigo, just because many people are named Matt, born in my generation. My project had 6 Matts on it at one point, including 1 Matt T. So I'm just calling me Swigo on Twitter. I got opinions, like everybody else. I'm a software engineer. Are they valid? I've worked at 2 big agencies, AKQA and Huge, which are just 2 of the larger scale digital agencies. Standard model of doing everything from early stage strategy, implementation, huge website builds. Worked for 1 startup, built everything from the ground up in Laravel. Had more fun than I knew what to do with. That was a blast. And then also worked for a large product company as well. So seeing the whole gamut of, we used to develop 2 60-page PDFs to just totally Agile and startup, just flailing trying to figure out how to do this. So I've seen a lot of different ways to kind of do this. PHP, I've been writing PHP for 15 years. I think it was 14, started PHPWorld. Learned a lot of bad habits. Went and learned Java, really in Java for a while, did Android development, Spring development. Came back because of Symfony and Laravel and how great PHP's gotten in the last few years. It's just gotten incredible. So it's really cool to see the people who were critics of PHP for so long. Like, have you checked it out recently? Because it's gotten really, really good. And then lots of Spring developers, I showed them how Symfony works, and they're like, this is totally fine. So that's been great to see everything really evolve, especially what composers been able to do for the community. To see so many things getting reused, to see Symfony components getting reused in Drupal and Laravel is just amazing for me. So it's been a great ride, though. This is less of code talk, more of a kind of managerial talk. I'm making the dangerous veer towards management occasionally, so that's kind of what this talk's a little bit about. Agile and Scrum. This presentation takes a lot of leeways merging those 2 terms. They're 2 different things. So Agile is more of the theory, methodology, Scrum is more the practice. But as far as your organization is concerned, they probably use the 2 interchangeably. Most places I've seen have, they don't make the difference between them. So this talk kind of blurs those lines a little bit. Agile. I'm tired of hearing about them. Here I am talking. I mean, it's just annoying when you're somewhere trying to write code, and we're here to write code to solve problems. We know how to write code to solve problems. Just let us talk to users, we'll do it. Everyone's shouting about Agile. You know, I'm a little burned out on it. I get a little burned out when people coming and preaching about Agile and stuff like that. So I'm sick of hearing about them. Great, more buzzwords. What's going to happen next in 5 years? Some other new thing they'll sell us consulting for. Why are they popular? The past is way worse. That's the only reason they're popular, I think. There's some good things in Agile, there's some bad things, but the old way of, you know, I would look over 60 pages of wireframes. Okay, these look cool. Designers would roll off the project, UX would roll off the project, it would get to me, and the stuff wasn't right. And it just burned my team, beat my team out so bad. All right, let's take Agile shot. We've all been on a water failure project, promise ourselves never again. I mean, I've been on failing software projects, and it's the worst. And I think everyone, at least at some point, I don't know, how many people here have been on something that they would regard as a failure, a single project? Yeah, it's the worst feeling ever. And it's usually been a case of not delivering what someone really wanted. Most times that I've seen a failure. It's easy for us to say sometimes it's technology, but usually we can get the technology right. It's much usually we weren't close enough to the people with the problems, be that on a time frame or an organizational level to actually solve their problems. So that's kind of mostly what Agile fixes. So the rest of this presentation assumes it's familiar with Agile and Scrum. So how many people here have actually worked on like an Agile Scrum team doing sprints? Okay. So some of this may be a little wordy. If you have any questions about some of this stuff, please just pause me during it. So nobody wants to sit through a pre-presentation that ignores the difficulties of our jobs while telling us how to do them. So the worst thing I could do here was sit up here and talk to you about what Agile is and what you're doing wrong. Because there's already probably 1,000 consulting companies that will sell you that service. So I don't want to sit here and tell you how to do your job. So there's two kinds of Agile teams to run into. First one, fresh code Agile paint. We have the ceremonies, use the terms, built the 6-month-old specs, and a 20 people on our Scrum team. We're Agile. What more do you want? There's actually a lot of this out there, and I've seen it. I've been on 20-person stand-ups in the morning that take 45 minutes, and it's bad. It's really bad. So there's a lot of this out there. We'll build that in our next 2-month sprint. So sprint is an abstract term. It can be any amount of time. I prefer 2 weeks, some people prefer 2 months. And if you have a 2-month release cycle getting feedback from your users, you're not going to be doing too well. I'm not going to talk about fixing all those issues because they're boring. If you're in an organization that doesn't want to change or get with the times, those are big organizational problems. I don't want to talk about those. I'll save those for like an HR conference or something like that. What I do want to talk about is when you've got really great people and a great organization. So what's a really good Agile team look like? Teams are autonomous. So the biggest thing here is that you've got a team, they can execute this work however they think is right. No one's going to tell them how to do it. Hire 3 or 4 great engineers in this team and trust them to self-organize and do their job. Technical investment in Agile is the biggest thing I see, is you can't really do any of this without having really good deployments, having really good testing. That's it. If you have to do manual deployments and it's like a week process to do a deployment, you can't really do this at all. Same thing where we can't just really totally change course of what we're building if we don't have accurate tests as well. So you actually have to make that investment just to work. Support organizations, the biggest thing is people who do long-term high-level planning organizations want a list of what they're getting when. You can't quite give that, but I'll talk a little bit how you get close to that. But better organizations understand that good work takes time. And they understand you can't make a promise of this thing 5 months from now being exactly done as a state. And the biggest thing I'll talk about more later too is a focus on constant improvement. Is people on the team and people in the company having the attitude of we're still learning, always will be. So we've got our great people. It's all gonna be rainbows and sunshine, everything's gonna be perfect, right? This will be great. No, it still goes wrong. So let's talk about what goes wrong. So there's about 7 things I'm going to talk to you today. The first thing I've seen be the biggest hindrance to really good teams is ticket quality. So if you listen to only one part of this presentation, this is the one thing. If you want to check out, do whatever else after this. So the root of most Agile dysfunction, sort of pain for everyone. So when I talk about ticket quality, we use Jira, and ticket quality comes in 2 flavors. The first is story quality, stories being a new feature I'm going to develop, and the second being bugs. I work on a distributed team. I'm in DC, one software engineer in Bogota, Colombia, who has English as a second language, and then a team in New York City as well. So the thing I get on people's cases more than anything about is really poor quality tickets. If you write a bug ticket saying, that page, you know, the one with the button is broken, I will come talk to you about it. Because we've got a lot of that. So that's a poor ticket. That's a poor bug ticket. What's a good bug ticket look like? When I'm at this URL, insert the URL on the staging environment, on this browser, and I try to click this button, it should be doing this, but right now it's doing this. Here's the Chrome error log from HTTP statements that I saw when this happened. That's a really good ticket. So those are the ones you want your team to actually write. Story tickets, same thing. Someone says, I want this thing to do this thing. Now, when I'm a user and I click this button, I would like this thing to happen. And the thing I talk a lot about with stories like that is write a user story for functionalities that someone has never seen the software. Don't assume anyone has ever seen this software and write your user story that way. Because in my job, people spin off and on the team a lot. We might get a new person, they haven't been on the project for a year, I have. So when I visit this URL and I click this button, I would like this thing to happen. And just over-explain, over-communicate. So especially with a remote team too, you know, you're not there to tell them how it should work. They might work different hours, or they might not speak English as well. And they're only focused to read the ticket. So when you actually have really bad tickets and stories, here's a lot of what happens. You get really bad estimates. So there's no point in estimating if you can't understand what you're actually building. That happens. Unstable velocity. So velocity is how many points per sprint you're clearing. If you're not estimating right, that goes out the window. Slower work, this one gets me. If my developers have to pause every 30 minutes and ask somebody how something should work, they're really unproductive. They shouldn't be doing that. Missed requirements, biggest one. If we're working as a team, you're spending a lot of money on us, we should be building what you want. That might not be happening. It's terrible for testers. That's the biggest one, is your testers and your QA department will hate you. Software engineers built this feature, I want to test it, I don't even know how it's supposed to work. So now I have to kind of talk to a bunch of people about how it's supposed to work, and that's not even captured in the ticket. And the biggest one is stakeholders don't see value. So if we're building certain things and they're the wrong things, why did I hire all of you? What are you doing? This agile thing isn't working at all. So solutions, right? Specificity. So take the time to write great user stories and quickly understand. As I get older, I realized the value in writing human words and code. Or it used to be I just saw the value in writing code. Now I realize the value in communicating effectively through English, which I did when I was younger. So if you could take an extra 5 minutes to really rewrite the verbiage in a story and make it clear to understand to anyone, please do it. And have details developers need. So any nitty-gritty details you can think of, like put yourself in the shoes of a developer. So a lot of what I do is I'm like a tech team lead, and I a lot of times work with our product owner, and I take the attitude of I'm going to develop this myself, and I punch holes in the story. What happens when this happens? What about this? What about this edge case? If this service is down, do you want to show a 500 error, or do you actually just want this page to keep rolling and look like nothing happened? Things like that. So that's the biggest thing. Another thing is give everyone in your team a chance to punch holes in them. This is work we're going to do. Before we start it, let's just try to tear it apart and find every nitpicky detail we can. Hidden complexity. So this is the second problem I'm going to talk about. We said this was going to take a day. Now we think it's more like a week. This has happened a lot. And it's super, super common, and it's why people don't like software engineers. A lot of times I'd say. And this one's a little debatable, I think, after I put this up here. I looked at it this morning and I was like, I might catch some crap for that one. There's only one real cause for this. Work was started before a problem was fully understood. So it's really easy to dive in and say, I want to start coding. But it's not always the best thing to do. It's another thing where as I got a little older, I got a lot better about. So prepare with spikes. So spikes not meaning like battle armor or anything like that. Spikes is another agile term. So a spike means we don't know enough about this particular thing. Let's pause and do some research before we start to try to do it. Let's just start the work. That's what everyone says. That's what I want to do. Let's just code. You have problems, I can help you. Let's just do it. So, but pause before you dive into coding to make sure you have every detail you need. And a lot of people used to think spikes are just like kind of more story type things to figure stuff out. But it's actually, the way I view a spike is any possible thing that will slow any ticket down in the sprint, we figure out beforehand. That could be, how does this work? That could be, do the designs work? That could be, does our technical infrastructure even support this? Does our database schema support this? Is this the right thing to build now, or is there something else we need to build first? How will we test? That's a really super important one. I've seen features built and we didn't know how to test them. That's happened before too, it's been really bad. And number 5 is probably the most interesting one, is organizational limitations. There are scenarios where you're ready to build this ticket, but there's political problems with building a ticket. That happens. And when I was younger, my answer would have been screw off, who cares, let's build it. But now I'm like, well, if we take one more week and talk to these other people in this other department first, no one's going to give our team a lot of crap for building this feature they thought they wanted to build for the last 6 months but never got around to. So take as long as you need to get all the answers. So if you don't know how to start this work, or you think something might block it, just say that. And say like, hey, I don't want this work to come into the sprint because it's going to slow down. And a lot of times I've seen spikes as like, all right, just spend an hour on this and figure it out. Not how you want to do it. If you need to take a day to say, does our current technical architecture, database structure, caching structure support what we want to build? Take a whole day to do it, but write it all down. So in the ticket for a spike, write down, okay, if we want to actually build up this next authentication feature, the way we pass tokens is kind of insecure. We want a better way to pass tokens, maybe in headers instead of a URL or something like that, since we'll be over SSL. That's really how we want to build it. And it's okay to take some time on these issues. The other thing too is, when you start a spike ticket shouldn't look like, just figure out X. It should say, spend some time on this, and these are the questions we need answered. Do we need to upgrade our database to build this? Do we need to change our caching mechanism? Can we support this kind of structured data? Come up with questions you need to answer, and then let someone research the work. Don't let someone say, oh, I researched it for a day, it's okay. Yeah, I would rather like that stuff get documented on a ticket for the most part. This is another controversial one too. Never moving work from a sprint. So with Agile, the big concept is we committed to doing this work, it has to be done this sprint. We're going to do it. We got to do it. And then we realized we were totally unprepared for something. So this work is due in 4 days. If we finish it, it's probably not really what we want, and it might be insecure. But we committed to finishing it, so we gotta finish it. Now, making uneducated guesses with software, especially in the realm of security, is pretty unbearable for me. It happens more and more, and it's super hard. So I work for an agency, and there's pressure to deliver features, pressure to deliver visible features. So this is a struggle I have a lot, where we just really say, we're not ready to build this even though we committed to it. Remove the work from the sprint, and people don't like this one. So a sprint commitment's a serious thing. You gotta treat it like it's serious, but it's okay to say you made a mistake. What I don't like is my whole team getting dragged down for a sprint because we put some work in there we weren't ready to start, and that happens. I'd rather say, you know what, we screwed up. We're gonna talk about this in retro. Let's address it there. But for now, let's focus on finishing everything else that is high quality work in the sprint. And I've seen so many teams just say we have to finish this because we committed to it, no matter what, even if it's not the right work or we're unprepared. I mean, the attitude of never moving work for a sprint is like saying we never make mistakes. And that's just unrealistic to me. So acknowledge, okay, we made a mistake in this ticket. Let's get it out of here. Get the work out of the sprint. And then the biggest thing is it's not a good thing. It means we screwed up. So say, okay, we screwed this up, let's get it out of there. But then let's talk a lot about this in retro and like make sure our definition of ready for a story actually is good and we're actually pulling in quality work. So another one here is really important. Task level planning only. So I like to work on a punch list. Developers on my team, the way I like to manage them is here's your 10 tasks, put on headphones and rock out. If you're gonna be in a half-hour meeting with Max today, don't put my people in meetings, let them just rock out with headphones on and hammer out code. It's the most productive way to constantly work with software engineering. But you can miss the big items though. So I always talk about this with Jira, is I'm looking through a Jira filter of 20 issues. Awesome, I'm gonna hammer through them with my team. Great. Problem there though is details are spread into different tickets. So there's nowhere for someone to understand how a system works or review it. And a lot of what I do is like technical architecture reviews. I can't look at 20 Jira tickets and understand your technical architecture. I can't do it. A product owner can't look at 20 Jira tickets and understand product vision or convey it to somebody. They can't do it. So some problems you see here is features don't fit together. We built all these little features that don't really work. These inconsistent coding patterns. We were just doing these things one thing at a time instead of saying, hey, we probably really should have refactored a base class first, and then we need to do all that stuff in those individual kind of service classes or manager classes. I've seen that before. Architecture is short-sighted. I've seen that too many times, is that we have this huge feature list, but no one looked at the feature list against their current technical architecture and revised it. They just said, I gotta build this feature, this feature, this feature, and now we got a mess. And team output is unknown. This is another really interesting one too. So we do client-facing work. So clients give us money, we do work. That's not really compatible with Agile, because Agile is like, we're gonna tell you what we're gonna get as we go. So clients, that's not gonna fly. So we have to kind of give them what we call a sprint forecast, or a sprint roadmap, which is like, for the next 3 months, here's what we're gonna be giving you approximately. We can adjust course if you want, but this is kind of what you're paying us for and you're gonna get. Also, the other thing too is for team alignment. I really like this a lot, because I like developers to know what we're building 3 or 4 months out. You know what I mean? It's good to give developers the punch list, but they should also know the product vision for the next 4 months. So they can make the right calls when they build features. And don't just let them look one task at a time. So like I was saying, plan at a higher level, sprint forecast to stakeholders, make sure your entire team understands the product vision when it's out. I get ahead of myself with these slides, I've noticed. This is my biggest one I like to use a wiki to define technical architecture, is I really enjoy nice long Confluence pages describing technical architecture and how it relates to features. And then you can actually obviously just link those to your Jira tickets as well. But trying to do technical architecture in a Jira ticket has never worked for me. But I want to talk a little bit about this one already, work not being truly ready. When I say the term ready, ready is an Agile term saying this work is high quality work, the story's good, we can nail this in a sprint. So the development of the story went great, but testing's taking forever. How many people have run into this situation before? It happens a lot, and it's super frustrating for the entire team to feel like we're doing this work, but it's not actually impacting anything. We wrote the code, get it out the door, come on, what's the problem? I've been there, and it's not a good attitude to have. Biggest thing my team learned over the last year, ready means ready to test. So not just ready for development. So we would look at stories and go, okay, it's ready to test. And we were working on a pretty complex technical architecture for a hospital. hospital with a lot of very interesting medical systems that are very difficult to work with. And a lot of what we do is working with those APIs. So don't just ask yourself if a story is ready for development. Ask if you can quickly nail the testing. So a lot of times we would run into blockers with testing. And at the end of the day, the shift we had was we're not in the business of writing code, we are in the business of shipping features. And that means it's not just ready to code, it's ready to test. And we just have to absolutely nail the testing every time. Some of the blockers we run into with testing, is there a test plan? Super important for some of our more complex stuff. Do we have to modify data to test? This is a really interesting one because we always didn't have pre-production versions of certain APIs. So we couldn't trigger certain API scenarios to actually make our tests run right. We ran into that one, well, that was work that was finished a week ago and we can't ship the feature. That's incredibly frustrating. Our physical device is available. More and more we do really responsive, highly stylized layouts, and some executive has this certain Samsung device and there's a bug on just that Samsung device and they give us a lot of money, so yeah, we have to fix that. So we have a device library now where people can actually check out devices and stuff like that. We ran into that one a lot. Number 4 is a really interesting one. We need another team to help. So our system right now is a set of Symphony bundles that talk to various APIs and power a hospital website. We work on one of the Symphony bundles, pretty much. And there were scenarios where we weren't getting exceptions from another bundle the way we needed to actually test some stuff we wanted. So we actually might need to talk to another team. And if you talk to that team and say, hey, I need you to kind of rework this the next hour, they're going to say no. But if you talk to them a week ahead of time, they can probably help you out. So the biggest thing here is that before you start any work, ask yourself, can we actually test it? Not just can we code it? And QA members of your team will love you for this. Really, really big on supporting QA team members because they often feel neglected by developers. But if you take this step of setting, essentially backlog grooming, stuff like that, is setting developers up for success. This stuff here is setting your testers and your QA team members up for success. And it's like anything we do is if you try to be successful the second you start it, you're going to probably not do too great. If you pause beforehand and go, hey, let's make this really easy to do when we get there, it'll go phenomenally. This is another favorite one of mine that I was super bad about when I was younger. Now I'm a little better. Tickets replacing communication. All hail the money sprint board, it's the source of truth. All I care about is what column this is in, who's assigned to it. That is all that I care about. And I get that approach, so I work on a remote team, where people work odd hours or things like that. And if the sprint board isn't up to date, I'm going to hassle you about it. Every morning, pretty much, people say, Matt, I'm overwhelmed, or something like that. And I go, well, is you're up to date? No. And I'm like, well, I don't know how I can help you. I really don't know how I can help you by taking any of your issues or anything like that. So it's good to have a small sprint board as a source of truth. But there's a lot of problems with that approach. That shouldn't replace human-to-human communication. And it often does on digital teams. So this is another one I used to do too. I assigned the Jira ticket to you. Why would I need to talk to you about it? I assigned you that bug. It's clearly your fault. Read it and figure it out. I used to do this one too. And the really bad one with this that I've seen is developers and QA assigning a ticket back and forth, just like throwing it back and forth like a football, and then getting pissed off and then not talking to each other at all. So I've seen that one happen a lot, and it's super sad. I used to do that too. Remote teams can be especially bad about this. We use HipChat. It's awesome to use HipChat. It gives my team an odd sense of community and humor, even though we're remote. So it's great, but we've been really bad about picking up the phone in the past. So this one's pretty much talking is greater than tickets. Take the time to explain complex issues to teammates. We had a new tester on our team, wrote up a bug, spent some time on it. I looked at it, didn't think it was an issue. The acceptance criteria on the ticket was incorrect. And if I had hopped on the phone with him, I would have stayed to teach